Thank you. Won't you please be seated? Well, I think that to God and the masters, each one of you are worth more than $100,000 a week by your constant devotion, your loving hearts, your sacrifice, surrender, and service to the Great White Brotherhood, and your unending decree work for the masters, for freedom, and the United States of America. God bless each and every one of you. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. Thank you. As advertised, we have two topics to get to today. First is the EMP survival and preparedness presentation, followed by an update to the Bozeman's TC rejuvenation project. Now, I want to start off by saying that this presentation on EMP preparedness is not for the purpose of going over every little thing that would be good to have and prepare with. That will be for an upcoming meeting that we'll have sometime in the near future. This EMP preparation is not also for survival or what to do in nuclear fallout. As if you don't know already, you'll learn as we go along, an EMP blast does not produce radiation in and of itself. A nuclear blast, a bomb falling on the land does. An EMP, however, is much more devastating in its effect than a nuclear war, and you'll hear about why that is the case as well. Today's meeting will be very focused specifically on one item that would be good to you have. The board thinks so. We thought so. We did research. Does everyone know what an EMP, what an electronic pulse is? Does everyone know? If you don't know, raise your hand, because I didn't know. I will say that 6 months ago, I really didn't know what an EMP blast was, and I had no idea it could protect from it when I heard about it. But since then, the board being responsible for the Bozeman community, the Bozeman Teaching Center, felt it was incumbent upon us to find what we would do for our community in the event of the unthinkable event, because when you get to find out more about this EMP and the videos we're going to show, it is an unthinkable thing, and we cannot have it happen. So does everyone know how catastrophic an EMP blast would be? You probably get a hint by what I'm saying, right? So if, like me, you didn't know, we all will, after we watch this shortened and very edited video. It was originally 50 minutes. I knew he wouldn't want to sit down for 50 minutes and then another 2-hour meeting after that. So we condensed it into about 5 minutes, 5 really important things. So just so you know, we'll make some calls. We're gonna make calls right after this video. So roll it, Antonio.
"150 years ago, a giant solar flare heaved a chunk of the sun into our planet. It knocked out the world's first primitive electric system, the telegraph. Experts agree the next strike is overdue. What would happen if the same size storm struck our modern world right now? Would we survive? Peaceful starlit night, when all of a sudden, the power goes out. And a family making dinner gets a nasty surprise.
You get shocked because there would be very strong and sudden currents flowing through these wires.
You would have sparks, you would have fires, you would have short circuits of anything electrical.
Compared with even a nuclear war, that'd be terrible and a lot of people would die, but losing the electric grid would kill a lot more people.
12 hours after the lethal solar flare strikes, electrifying the atmosphere. High-tension wires and transformers have been obliterated.
Our transformer systems actually would fuse. The wiring inside would just simply melt down and fuse.
Giant transformers, which convert energy between 2 or more devices, are the backbone of the world's electric system. They take up to 2 years to build, and national security experts warn that there are no backups. The blackout disables vital pumps that maintain water pressure.
A lot of municipal water supplies are actually run by electric pumps. If there's no electricity, there's no electric pumps keeping this water supply active.
No water to drink, no water to flush toilets and provide sanitation.
The pump at the gasoline station was electric, so you can't even fill up your 5-gallon can that you've got in the garage.
The modern food system is also totally dependent on electricity.
In our regional food warehouses, we only have enough food to feed the population for 30 days. After 30 days, there is no food. And in fact, after 72 hours, the emergency generators that keep the food cool run out of gas, and its food starts to spoil.
The entire global financial system runs on electricity.
The bank doesn't have a pile of money sitting in a vault for you back there that you can then access. It's a bunch of bits, dots and dashes that are stored in electronic computer systems that will be inaccessible. So suddenly your lifetime savings could be wiped out. It is likely that we would revert to a barter economy.
In September of 1859, the mother of all solar flares hit the planet Earth. It's called the Carrington event. Telegraph operators recorded enormous anomalies, fires, sparks taking place, and telegraph wires being electrified as if by magic.
A similar phenomenon of massive blackouts could be caused by the detonation of a nuclear bomb in space. The energy released would cause an electromagnetic pulse, or EMP.
They were first discovered in 1962 when both the Americans and the Russians detonated in orbit nuclear weapons. And both the Russians and the Americans were surprised at how long these waves reached and knocked out the transformers.
Hardening the grid is a remarkably simple, inexpensive process, as little as $10 to $15 billion.
Nobody has ever really lived through anything of this nature, so it's very difficult for people to even fathom its existence.
Electromagnetic pulse is essentially a peculiarly sized nuclear device that becomes a giant lightning strike. It doesn't kill by radiation or by the power of the shock wave, but it knocks out all the electrical appliances, including the generating system that produces the electricity, including cars that have traditional electrical devices, all the telephones. And if you look at the size of the electrical generating system, it's not replaceable. I mean, the length of time it takes to replace that, particularly in a society which has lost electricity, is staggering. 7 nuclear physicists to study what the effect could be. These are all people who come out of the Cold War era. They'd all worked for the Defense Department. They were all experts in nuclear weaponry. And they came back and said unanimously, this is a catastrophic threat waiting to happen, and that North Korea, China, and Russia all understand it and are all working on it.
So that video, that Newt Gingrich, that was like in the early 2000s, 2009, 2005, something like that. And we understand that Trump did something, but obviously it's probably not a good idea to broadcast to your enemies or broadcast worldwide what you've done. And so we don't know. We don't know. But from what I've heard, we haven't done much. So let's take our handout here. We've got a call that we're going to make. We're going to make a call. And it'll only be a few minutes, but starts off with only make the call, Shiva. And that comes from a dictation, right? So let's begin this. Only make the call, Shiva. 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 In the name of the I am that I am, Saint Germain, El Mori, Archangel Michael, I demand the immediate action in Congress to install EMP protection for critical civil infrastructure in all 50 states. See that systems are in place to protect the U.S. and its allies against EMP from a solar event, nuclear blast, or any other technology. Take command over the Department of Homeland Security and our readiness to defend civilian military infrastructure from any potential EMP attack or cyber attack on the U.S. power grid, internet, or defense or communication networks. Take command over Russian and Chinese hypersonic missiles and nuclear anti-site and EMP weapons. Accelerate the deployment of all defenses needed to protect America's electric grid, satellites, and all civilian military systems against these threats. Shiva, 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 Shiva. Amen. Thank you very much. During our break between the two parts, we'll be doing Violet Flame for 10 minutes while people can take a break. So we'll be doing Violet Flame between that. I think we all agree after watching this video that an EMP blast must not happen. It cannot happen. We cannot allow it to happen. Last winter, a prominent astrology in our Keeper community publicly stated and predicted that China would do something militarily in the spring. She saw it in the astrology. She openly predicted it. However, nothing happened. And we were told that at the end of July, earlier this year, and the beginning of August, the astrology showed there was a dangerously high probability of military conflict involving the United States and America. And it seemed like something could really happen when Nancy Pelosi flew to Taiwan, greatly angering communist China right during that astrological configuration. However, once again, nothing happened by God's grace, and I'm sure by our constant and consistent and tremendous decree work. So I want to say here and now that I believe, and I think I'm joined by each and every one of you, that our best and surest form of defense is our decrees to the ascended masters in the hierarchy of heaven. And by that, I say, praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. I am that I am. Sonnet Kumara. Praise the Lord. I am that I am. Sonnet Kumara. Praise the Lord. I am that I am. Sonnet Kumara. However, we all know that Mother built the fallout shelters. We would be foolish, our board and the Bozeman Teaching Center, to not prepare best as we could and practical for this unthinkable event, whether it be a solar flare or an EMP blast. And one of the best options for mitigating the effects we have found, the board has found, we've researched this now, and research from a product called the EMP Shield. We didn't know a device actually existed. Please take a look at another video, it's only 2 minutes, of this device that the board would like you to know about. A device the board has purchased and installed in our teaching center. Go ahead, Antonio.
Shield, and today I'm excited to show you our new technology, the world's first whole home EMP protection device.
Our family of EMP protection devices installs easily in minutes. Being employed this year by federal organizations and electrical companies, the EMP Shield has been tested at Keystone Compliance, a federally approved DoD testing facility. Also serving as one of the world's fastest whole home surge protection devices, working in less than 1 nanosecond, the EMP Shield will protect against electromagnetic pulses, coronal mass ejections, lightning, and all forms of power surges. Proven to withstand more than 40 EMP strikes with zero degradation, the EMP Shield is also one of the world's strongest surge protectors, capable of withstanding over 100,000 amps.
We actually have true testing results to where we comply to the military standard.
And is that where you guys sent it off to the Keystone Lab, if I remember?
Yeah, it's Keystone. Yeah, and so I just wanted to highlight them real quick. They're actually one of the premier DoD testing facilities in the United States. It's not a cheap endeavor to do these things, but we went through the process of doing them just to show everybody that we're serious and what our product is actually serious. And I just want to highlight, Tim, and I'll let you continue, is we didn't just meet one military standard, we've actually met almost all of the EMP military standard.
So basically you're saying that anything that's plugged in within your home is you're essentially shunting the electricity, kind of sucking the electricity, basically, and I'm using like layman's terms here, but out of all the wires and cables in your home and pushing it to ground so that it doesn't damage the items that are in your home.
That's correct.
All over voltage that you would get from the EMP, that's exactly what our unit does. It shunts and shorts all of that over voltage that would come through from the EMP into your electrical wiring and through your home or through your business. We take and shunt that to ground. That's exactly what our equipment does to and protects your home. That is why if you have anything plugged into it, it doesn't matter whether it's your cell phone charger or your computer, your TV, your microwave, doesn't matter what is plugged in. If it is plugged in, we can protect it up to 250 feet from the EMP Shield.
Hey, everybody.
So we have installed one of these devices on our electrical panel, and any electrical impulse or pulse that comes in from outside goes through this device first. And as you've heard, what this device does is in a nanosecond, whatever that is, a trillionth of a second, whatever, it flips the switch and takes the current that comes into the device through one of these wires, and it shunts it through this wire, goes to ground. So it avoids going into your electrical system. So for this building here, if there was an EMP blast, anything that was plugged into the electrical outlets would be protected by this. Up to 40 times they've tested it with a real EMP testing lab. And so we believe in it. We bought it, we installed it. We've got it on our Generac generator as well, because if you have a generator, you need to have that protected because it has microcircuitry as well. Also, you can get one for your car. I've got one installed in my car. And if you have a car after 1976, then you have microelectronics that will get fried. Before 1976, they say you're okay. So it's $389. And the car is the same. The car device is $389, and it looks exactly the same. It's rated for a 12-volt system, the one for the car, and this one is rated for a, whatever it is, 120 or 220 volt system. So $389. Now, when I first, just a second, Carol, when I first approached them and asked them, I said, do you do bulk discount? That was like 6 months ago. And they said, yeah, if you bought 30 of them, we could do $309, so $80 off. I don't know if there's 30 people interested in the community getting that, but if we've got a lot of people that are interested in ordering one for their car and or one for their home, contact somebody on the board and we'll see what we can get as far as a discount. Now $389 is for the purchase. It doesn't include the installation. Now, when you install it in your car, I did it in 15 minutes, 10 minutes. Andrew could probably do it in 5. He's so adept at those things. She did it in 10. So, but the one that goes in your electrical panel, we have Mark Lawley do. It's a little bit more involved. Michael Koster, I'm sure, could do it. And I don't know if anybody else in this audience would feel comfortable doing it, but it's a little tricky. So you heard in this video that the EMP Shield device protects everything that is plugged into a wall socket from an electrical surge, such as come from a solar flare or EMP blast. Now, you might say, why are we concerned about an EMP blast? Well, when Russia invaded Ukraine, there was a big concern about what's going to happen next. And when Pelosi went over to Taiwan and we had this astrology, there was a big concern of what might happen next. And we heard from Newt Gingrich that you saw the web page where it said that they're plotting and planning a Pearl Harbor type of EMP blast against the United States. Astray encircle it all. And we don't like to think about it, but we have to face reality. We're more in a threat now than we were when Mother was around, because because it's just more of that's the way the world is. It also protects, they also sell these devices for your cars. As I said, I have one installed in my car. We have a couple of board members installed on their car. So the question will come up, what good is protecting your electronic appliances if there's no power after an EMP or solar flare? You'd be like an island in the desert, so to speak. They won't have any electricity to run on. Well, I have two answers for that. If you had if you had this device that's going around the room installed in your home and also have a generator like a solar generator, your things would work. Your appliances would not be harmed by the EMP blast because it would be protected by this EMP shield. And if you had your solar generator that was protected in a Faraday cage, that's a little term there, or if you had a generator that was protected, you could then run that generator and power your refrigerator, which is probably the most important thing to power, and maybe a few lights. But if you didn't have that EMP shield installed and an EMP blast, heaven forbid, went off, you have nothing working, nothing. I mean, the worst case scenario, nothing works. Okay, Carol, go ahead. Yeah, anything unplugged will not be protected. Yeah, if anything is unplugged, it will not be protected. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, because what is that's been explained to me is that any electronic or wiring apparatus or device acts as an antenna for the maybe you can help me out, Scott, the negative wave. Is it negative from the EMP pulse? Do you know? It's a negative wave, and it's seeking to that tract of the positive, right? It doesn't affect humans because we're negatively charged. Am I right so far, Scott? Okay, but so an EMP blast won't affect us because we're not conductive to the electrical pulse that's put out. If you have a radio or anything electronic wiring your grid, that's why the grid, the electronic grid of the United States, of the world, would be wherever that EMP blast went off, or a solar flare, would be like an antenna magnetizing, attracting, and amplifying that EMP blast. And so therefore, anything that was able to receive a signal, say, or be receptive to any electronic would receive that electronic pulse and be burned out. Yes, Andrew? Yeah, because it's all going through, it's all tied to the electrical grid.
So if there's a lightning strike, if the wires are picking up, a pulse from whatever EMP blast, it will shunt the power into the ground.
Right.
But it seems like any other device is still vulnerable.
Yeah, well, that's what I just said, isn't that? No, not according to this. You know, you have to, don't take my word for it. You can get more information on EMP Shield, but they said if it's plugged into your electrical grid, your local electrical grid in your home, it'll be protected, on or off. It's just if it's not protected, if it's not plugged in, then it's not a part of this system, the EMP Shield. Susan? Well, okay, so yeah, okay, let me finish my answer to my two questions. If you had this device installed in your home and you also have a generator like a solar generator, your refrigerator and your electrical equipment would not be destroyed and would work. How do we know that? Has it ever been tested? Have we ever had a solar flare? Have we ever had an EMP blast? No. So there's a certain point of faith here, but you know, we've done the research. This is what we believe. There's probably other devices out there. Barbara? Right. So if you had this device installed in your home when they get the power back on. So suppose EMP happened, heaven forbid, everything's knocked out. Well, you're going to have electricians out there. You're going to have people scrambling, trying to get things going. If your appliances have been protected, when they get that electrical back up, whatever it is, 2 months, 2 weeks, 2 years, your system, your private system would still would work because it wouldn't be affected by the EMP Shield. Am I making sense there? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? So yes, you're going to be an island in the desert, but if once the desert becomes electrified, you will be able to operate. While other people where they had their electronic devices disabled and destroyed, even if the power went on, they couldn't start their refrigerator or their computer because it would be fried because it wasn't protected. Yes, Kristen. Yeah, well, that's a good question. I know. Well, you could get to the teaching center. You could get to the teaching center. So that's a question that my wife faced with my son. He's down in California, the worst place to be in EMP Shield, an EMP blast. And I tried to put one on his car. It didn't work because his car is glitchy. But I'm thinking, what would that might get him in worse place? He'd drive from Ukiah, California, get 50 miles and be stuck because. So yeah, but in Bozeman, if you had an EMP Shield on your car, you could get to the teaching center. And that's why we're here in Bozeman. We're not in San Francisco. We're not in Oakland. We're not in Houston, where if you drove a car, you probably wouldn't get 100 feet before you'd be overrun by marauding gangs, which is something we don't want to get into. Does somebody have a hand over there? Ed? Because it wouldn't start. His car wouldn't start. And I tried all the different wiring. I called up EMP Shield. They never heard of it because this device only uses, if you see on it, it only has a little green. The only electricity that's used is it lights up these little diodes here. It lights up these little diodes. It's passive. It's just passive. Otherwise, he couldn't understand it. But my son had to have his electrical system replaced. So I think there was something with that. All right. That would okay. Scott.
So I'd like to commend the leadership of the teaching center for the investigation you did and the assessment of different devices and moving forward. And I think it also conjectured the fact that you had to have the service panel replaced. And it seemed to be probably a good opportunity to put the device in the service panel.
Well, that one doesn't have this, but they fortunately they made a mistake and they gave us this one. So we have one for the new panel, but supposedly it reaches 250 feet. It's good for 250 feet of protection, but yeah, we'll be using this for the new panel. Okay, so all right, so as I stated, this device cannot protect electrical components that are not plugged in. And for those items, you would need a Faraday cage to protect those items, those electrical items from the electromagnetic pulse, from the electric charge. Yes, Ed? Right. That's right. That's right. Now, these questions that will inevitably come up are going to be dealt with in a future meeting as we go over all the Faraday cages, water storage things, and radios, ham radios, things that we've already purchased here for the teaching center. So we'll go over that just shortly.
Faraday cage is not something to keep a Faraday inside.
Well, you got to watch those Faradays. They can bite, you know. Yeah, Faraday. So if you see one, I would say, well. However, the board. So as mentioned earlier, this particular presentation is not meant for going to everything you would need to survive such a cataclysmic event, such as an EMP or a solar flare. That will be presented in a future meeting. I think I've said that. However, the board has accomplished a number of things to help us survive such an event for a period of time. So what has the board done to prepare for the unthinkable? Let's go through the slides. Antonio. So right there, the microphone here. Right there, you see Mark Lawley. He's installed that device, just like it, in our electrical panel in the boiler room. Next slide. We've also installed a hand-generated well water pump because the electric one might not be operational if you had an EMP shield. And this is something this guy, I think his name is Ron, I don't remember, but he said after Russia invaded Ukraine, he got deluged with business all over the place, all over the United States, even the Philippines. Yeah, yes, that install these, and they're very cheap, $350. And our water table, according to him, is 14 feet. We'd have the water tested. We need to do some work on the water because it's not quite drinkable. But probably the best thing to do with that is get a filtration system, which is what we're working on next. Next slide. I don't remember his name. It's Apocalypse well pumps, Apocalypse water well pumps. Just look on the internet for that. And so what did we also do? We spent our money and bought 100 pounds of turtle beans, 100 pounds of lentils, $500 a chicken breast, garbage bags, and the most important issue you see highlighted there, it would be horrible if you didn't have that. And then we have other things that are not shown here. Right there, you see the chicken breasts. Inside those those bins are, I think it's 200 pounds of rice. So we kind of figured that if we had enough food for a certain number of people for a certain amount of time, that it would help. You know, even the ranch can't supply everybody forever, but we're hoping that if people needed, if the worst case came and people came to the teaching center and they were too afraid to go home, it was unsafe, unheated, no food, no water, this is a place that people would want to come to. So we have prepared, and we're still preparing. We also have ham radio that Carolyn donated, the ham radio station that will go a very long distance all the way down the ranch and further. And we're in the process of getting these portable radios you see there programmed. And our goal is to have each one of the board members have one. And then once we establish that we can communicate with each other through the radios, then we'll recommend them to the community to purchase their own, because if the EMP blast happens, there will be most likely no communication through cell phones or phones, and radios could be iffy too. But if you have them in a Faraday cage, the ham radio, we also have a EMP shield to protect the ham radio station from the antenna to the radio station. There's an 8-foot ground that goes to the. All right, next slide, please. It's go back, Antonio. You see the battery down there? Car battery, and it's trickle charge, right? So we also bought an emergency supply bag that's only going to be used during if there's an emergency. Next slide. And guess what these are for? Anybody can guess? Anybody? What? Ice cream. Okay. So if you don't have water to flush your toilets, the buckets will go to the pond or go to the snow, and that's how you flush your toilets if you can't flush. But believe me, we're talking about heat. We were just talking about yesterday. We do have a propane tank, and we do have a natural gas system, but we're in the process of buying propane converter kits for each one of those. We have we will have 3 heating systems. We have one here, the boiler room, and the new facility, the new rooms, and we'll have to get propane converter kits for those if we want to use the propane, if we need to use the propane, because it won't run on propane if you don't have the converter kits. And which can be switched over to the existing piping to replace the natural gas feed. And it could last a month, it could last 2 months, depending on how much it's used. All right, so where are we at? What time? 1:40. Okay, we are time for our break, right on time, 1:40. We're going to take a 10-minute break now. Barbara, if you want to ask questions during this 10-minute break, fine. That's true. Forgot about that. And Antonio, you are recording this, right? Okay. All right, so we can, Carol. No, what this guy, this scientist that you heard talking said he's seen that EMP blasts can go 20 feet into the ground. And I think that has something to do with the water connectivity. You know, it's all about connectivity and magnetism and being a conduit for electrical pulse. David. Actually, my research is that Faraday bags aren't inexpensive. The most inexpensive thing you can get is a steel garbage can. I got a big 31-gallon steel garbage can for $30 from Murdoch's, and you have to line it with cardboard. Then you have to seal it with conductive tape, and that's what I have at my home. And I'm going to put my solar generator in there. I'm going to put a computer that I don't use, and things that I want to protect in that 31 gallon. And it's a Faraday cage. That's what it is. It's cheap. Now you get a Faraday cage that you buy on Amazon. They can go up to hundreds of dollars, $400, $500.
When we have our next meeting, I'll bring you to that meeting. They just stick an ammo box and you go on YouTube and they will give you directions on how to do it. There are several different types of directions. So if you have any questions, call me.
Sharon. Yeah, we really need to go to the microphone.
That said, my husband and I bought a series of 6 or 7 Faraday bags that come in a package of all different shapes and sizes that you can put your laptop in, your phones, your this, your that, your key fob, and the whole package was only $60. I didn't think that was bad at all. So if you're like me and you like convenience, don't have time to make things, you're not an engineer, that's what worked best for me. They're Faraday bags. Yeah, and it's a series of like 6 or 7 of all different shapes and sizes. And I believe it cost about $60. I thought it was a really good deal. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention a new book that's been out for a fairly short time, Nuclear War Survival Skills 2022 edition. Now, some of you may remember back during the shelter cycle, the original version of this was out and many of us read it. It was very good. But the young man who then was a young man worked with the prime author of this, Crescent Kearney, for 30 years. So Crescent has passed, but this young man, lives on, and he's the one that revised it. So it's a 2022 Nuclear War Survival Skills, and I recommend it highly.
All righty, so we have about 5 minutes before our next segment begins. And if there's no more questions, let's just do a little violet flame. And if anybody has a question, raise your hand and we'll pause the violet flame to get, oh, Barbara. Okay, Barbara's saying in the past that they've recommended you stay at home in an emergency. That's okay if you've got power, if you got power. But if it's 0 degrees and you don't have power, you don't have heat, you don't have water, that's why the teaching center has done what it's done. The board has done what it's done, because we realize that some people, if a catastrophic event happens, whatever it is, they might feel safest at the teaching center. And we're preparing for people to sleep overnight here. If you're afraid to go home because it's not safe, or you can't go home, you don't have water, you don't have electricity, you don't have heat, that's what the board is doing here to prepare for people to stay overnight for a period of time. We do have food, we do have water, we do have the things that I showed you there, and other things. We have utensils, bags. We're also looking at body bags. A reality that, if we're here for a long time, things could happen. But you bring up a good point, and I'll mention it here, is that if we have an event where people need to come to the teaching center, they want to come to the teaching center because it's a scary world out there, and we would bring you in, but you would want to bring a sleeping bag, a pillow, your medication, food that you think is going to spoil. Because if we do have food, but none of it's going to spoil for a couple of years, at that point, we'll give it away and replace it. But if we come to a place where we need to use the teaching center as a place for refuge, for warmth, for food, for companionship, for sleep, then bring the things that you need, especially food that's going to spoil, because the food we have isn't going to spoil for some time. But if you had food that was going to spoil, then you want to bring that. We'd start eating that first, right? So anything that you need to have for comfort, you would bring here, right? So we have some sleeping bags, but very few. We have one thing that teaching center I think has more of anything is water. We've got snow, we've got the pond, we've got the well, and so we're pretty well. And the well system for Bozeman is gravity fed. There might be some electrical components between us and Highlight, which is where most of the water comes from, but it's gravity fed. So when I called the water department, they said if you had power go out, you would still have water pressure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. If you're solely on a well, then it's up to you. Go ahead.
So anybody who's on Bozeman water would still have water?
Well, I'm not going to make that
What were you saying?
broad.
I don't understand what you're saying.
I'm saying what the person told me is that Bozeman, the Bozeman area, not talking about Belgrade, Bozeman area is fed by Highlight and a spring up by Sourdough. And the Highlight is gravity fed. It's up 1,000, 2,000 feet. And it comes down through pipes. There's probably electrical things that turn things on and turn things off. But so I can't say for sure that all of Bozeman would have water, but I know the teaching center is pretty well covered. I mean, we've got the well, we've got city water, we've got the pond, and there's snow. So there's a lot of water resources here for the teaching center. Okay, I guess we're not going to get any violet flame in. We have 2 minutes. Is there any other question? Yeah, Susan? Okay, so now here's why we need to emphasize this. An EMP blast does not produce nuclear fallout or radiation. It does not produce nuclear fallout or radiation. A nuclear bomb hitting the earth produces radiation because it radioactivizes, how do you say it, the soil, the dust, and it goes up in a cloud, and that cloud is now radioactive, and it falls to earth. And that's where you get radioactive particles coming down. That's where you have a danger of radiation poisoning. But an EMP blast is from outer space above the earth. It does not produce any radioactive material itself. Well, I just said reasons why you wouldn't want to stay home. If it's 0 degrees and you don't have any water, and the teaching center has water and warmth, I would come here, and food for a certain number of people, a certain amount of time.